the recommended report on page 64. So we do have a lighting report that was submitted with the application, and it does set out the original proposal, which was that the lighting would be based on occupancy sensing, so it would be activated by passive infrared to increase brightness from a low level of 10% to 100%, obviously when it's activated for 30 minutes, and then it will go back down again. But also photocell sensing, as Councillor Love's talked about, but that would be roof level only, so it would only operate at the night time, not during daylight hours. So at night time, it again will be triggered by passive infrared from the floor below, on the basis that either a pedestrian was coming back to their vehicle, or a vehicle was obviously travelling up the car park to the roof level. And at night time, the lighting report does in fact propose that it has a nighttime setback dimming, which would be at a level of 10%. The suggestion, though, from officers in condition 9 of the report is that a lighting scheme is submitted for approval in writing, and that's because we wanted to have absolute clarity on all of the lighting issues across the whole of the building. So not just the location of the light fittings and the height of the lighting columns and the make of them and the lux levels of them, but also a plan that shows details of spill light levels and any measures that would be put in place to prevent stray light, including vehicle movements. You talked about headlights, Councillor Love, that might cause annoyance to neighbouring properties. But further, that the lighting would meet the requirements of Park Mark, obviously allow for the operation of CCTV given the concerns about antisocial behaviour, and also comply with the British standard in relation to emergency lighting. There is a related condition, condition 13, around management policy, and I think that relates, Councillor Love, to the last 2 points that you raised. Thank you for repeating the second one for my benefit. So I think the patrols would have to be picked up in the management plan, which condition 13 would secure, so the applicant could agree that those patrols continue to visit this particular car park. Condition 9 obviously doesn't have the specific point about the nighttime setback dimming, but as it is included in the lighting assessment that accompanies the application, I think the panel could be comforted that it would come forward through condition 9 to ensure, in fact, that what happens at Stafferton Way doesn't happen with this car park. We're talking about a totally different approach to lighting to the one that residents currently experience from the multi-storey car parks across the borough. And I would in fact countenance against assuming that this car park would look the same as another multi-storey car park currently does, because we can put the controls in place through the condition. Obviously, Chairman, if Councillor Love was comforted that those points could be taken forward in the existing conditions, that's great. If he felt he still wanted to ask for additional conditions to be added, Councillor Kellaway will move the motion, would need to be in accord. Thank you.
Chair, could I just say,
yes, Councillor Lowe.
Once these conditions have all been looked at and so forth, I'd like to be able to meet the officers and just go obviously through it, that we are all speaking from the same sheet.
I assume you are content with the conditions that have been laid out in the report. And Councillor Kellaway, are you happy with that?
Yeah, Mrs Jackson has explained that very clearly. I think that covers it, as far as I'm concerned.
Any other councillor wishing to add comment? Councillor Mrs Hunt.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and can I thank our officers very much for looking at that lighting. That was a concern of mine, following a very large block of officers in the rural area, and the lights would go on and off every time the security guard walks through and awake all the children in the houses at the bottom of the hill. So that's really good to know, and I appreciate that. I wouldn't mind some confirmation. We're talking here about the site is on land allocated as a business area. and the scheme would remove the land allocated for the business purposes. And we're also talking about greenbelt, because this land was greenbelt. The fact that it's been removed in the BLPSV as a business area, does that negate the fact that it's greenbelt? And if I can have confirmation of that, I'm pretty sure it does.
Have you got any other points that you...
Oh yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, if you don't mind. Yes, so
And,
no
and we'll
problem.
deal with it all in
Yeah.
one hit.
Yeah, thank you. I previously mentioned attempting to cross Vickers Way. Me personally, and I'm not disabled, I'm able-bodied, so it will be good to know how people are going to cross that very busy road. And also, an EIA. Have we had an EIA, Environment Impact Assessment, done on this huge amount? Because I think it's mentioned at a meeting, 14,000 was it?
The planning officer can confirm one way or
Okay,
the other.
that would be good, because of, the environment impact on residents, because there's a lot more residents there than were there when this report was done. Now also I want to talk about being proactive and reactive. And some of these things on noise and that are reactive rather than proactive. And I'm of the belief, and from some appeals that I've been reading, that the council should be proactive and not reactive to issues that come up. We should look in advance. So if that could be confirmed, thank you.
Our head of planning will now respond to those points that you've just raised, Councillor Mrs Hunt.
Apologies, Councillor Mrs Hunt, I was just wanting to double check and check again. That's okay. So the site is not in the Greenbelt. The site adjoins the Greenbelt boundary, and actually it was a point that came up earlier and I meant to clarify it for the panel's benefit. In fact, the former Park and Ride site to the south of the site is Greenbelt, but this site is not. In terms of environmental impact assessment, whether the proposal requires one, it's not, in our view, environmental impact assessment development. It doesn't trigger the threshold, and it's not been submitted on the basis of an environmental impact assessment.
Sure.
Tell me what does trigger the threshold for the EPA?
So the regulations set out a schedule of schemes that would automatically require environmental impact assessment. They're called Schedule 1 developments, and then a second schedule, Schedule 2, which gives guidance on schemes which may require environmental impact assessment. But essentially, it's the local planning authority's assessment as to whether, singularly or cumulatively with other development, a proposal would have significant impacts on the environment.
Well, thank you for that.
I might just put that on. Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I did second the motion last month, because I felt that the policies put forward, I was in agreement with them to refuse. And therefore, I haven't had a change. And I've looked at everything. As you can see, I've even looked at various other things that come up. And I can't change my mind, because I firmly believe those policies that were moved in refusal still stand, and therefore I would like to second Councillor Stretton's move for refusal. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Adam Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Much has been made of the fact that this has come back for the fourth time of asking, but I just remind everybody that we knocked this back twice because it wasn't complete. And so I refuse Councillor Hill's assertion that this has been rushed or forced. I mean, on the contrary. The bits of detail which I was glad to see finally demonstrated at the last sitting were the layout of the new roundabout, the elimination of the kink in Vickers Way, which creates the space for the new pavement, and the incorporation of the zebra crossing, which we asked for, I believe, at the first meeting. Now, at the last meeting, an argument that I presented for the first time was that the separation distances of the flats further down Wallingford Way are about 35 metres from Lock and Store, but that the end block, Marigold House, will only be a 22.5 metre separation, which is in itself a small, useful confirmation of the prior figure we had, which was about 22 metres. But I argued at the time, and I maintained, that the rear building line on the proposed site was well established. And I don't agree with the speaker, Mr. Chu, that 22.5 metres is extreme proximity, but I accepted last time that it was borderline, and that it therefore took this decision into the realm of plan and balance, and that in my opinion, the benefit exceeded the admitted harm. What I would add on this occasion, in the light of Mr. Lerner's new remarks, is that his remark that residents had no inkling of the possibility there would be a huge car park here. Agreed. Not specifically a car park, but paragraph 7.28 in the paper indicates that a large-scale building, as both Councillors Love and Kellaway have already said, could have been anticipated for the site. And if I were buying a property here, I would expect this to have been picked up in conveyancing. Again, not new information, but the latest addition to objection seems to be more intense about the conflict of policy, specifically that the car park does not generate employment as the emerging borough local plan requires us now to do. This is a material planning consideration. However, for me, it's not such a stretch to accept that the car park will stimulate employment and movement generally, and this is no less a benefit. And in fact, paragraph 5.5 of the emerging plan supports proposals that improve and upgrade employment facilities, and I would put that in this category. And finally, I would add to Councillor Kellaway's roll call of endangered car parks, West Street, which is an opportunity area. Thank you.
Councillor Claire Stretton.
Thank you, Chairman. There's just listening to the discussion, there's just a few other things that have come to my attention which I feel I should mention. The transport assessment that we've already discussed was based on incorrect data to start with because flats were not finished and they were not occupied, so the baseline data is wrong. We're now talking about issues with getting people across the road, so these crossings are being put in order to help people get across two major roads to the station. That too, surely, will impact on the traffic assessment because you can't, if you're going to have people crossing the road, you have to stop the cars. And if you stop the cars, you add to the queues and you also add to the air quality issues because stationary traffic, of course, is the biggest problem, creates the biggest air quality issues. I am really concerned that this panel have continually disregarded extant and emerging policies. What is the point of having policies if we continually ignore them? We are now so short of employment land in this, in and around Maidenhead. I have residents and businesses in my ward coming to me saying that they're going to have to close their businesses down or move them to Woodley, so we then lose that employment because they cannot find anywhere else in Maidenhead to run their businesses. I know that's not material to this application, but it is background information. And this is why we have policies to make sure that the balance between residential, employment, car parks is correct. And we just seem to be ignoring all of that. And therein lies madness, frankly. So this is against our extant and emerging policies, and therefore we really should not be approving things, because how can we cope with proper infrastructure if we continually are moving the goalposts? I really fear for officers who are trying to sort out these various infrastructure requirements, because from one day to the next they don't know what they're dealing with. I just wanted to make those points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Derek Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make mine short and sweet, actually. I don't think we need this car park. A fact borne out by our own occupancy signs on the Braywick Road. We just need a lot better management of the ones we've got. And the facts are, the residents do not want it. The town does not need it. And remember, whilst I hate to repeat myself, when we stop listening to the residents' views, we stop being their representatives and become their rulers. And when we also ignore the majority of their elected wards councillors who are against this car park, then democracy has effectively died.
Any other councillor wishing to, I think, Councillor Jerry Clark first.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make observations. The debate has been thorough, and not having previously been on panel when the application has been discussed, and having read the papers, it's clear that there are objections that have been raised on planning, on policy and industrial land. However, I do concur that the implementation of a car park is an encouragement and an adjunct to